What's up, Digidestins? Today, this is more of a beginner-friendly video, and I kind of want to give some value that might be good for advanced players, intermediate players, or even beginners in general. So this is a tip video to kind of just get you a feet wet of understanding consistency in the form of the Digimon card game. So without further ado, let's dive in the video and talk about it. So today we're going to be covering consistency in deck building. So these tips could help get your deck building or deck moving in the way it needs to for the long-term competitive play that you want to see for it. So major turning points in games like this, like Digimon, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, stem down to being able to search card pieces or draw your card pieces. Well, Digimon is a different kind of entity. We do have a mulligan in the game. As you start a turn, you draw your opening hand, look at the top 5, decide if you want to keep it, you put it back in, shuffle the deck, and draw a new 5, then put down your security. This allows you to have the maximum amount of consistency of being able to see any of your pieces that you might need, and it allows you to have at least one mulligan for a refresh. Many card games have these type of mulligans, from like Pokemon has a similar one. Cardfight Vanguard, similar, had this mulligan where you put back X amount of cards, and then you shuffle and then draw. Same thing here. But, stuff like this does matter and it comes into deck building. So, if you don't know, in Digimon, you can play up to 4 copies of a card. And so normally in a deck building, you want to have 4 copies of cards you always want to see at any moment in the game. Then you have 3 cards you like to see more often than not. 2 copies is that it's good to use most of the time, but you don't need to see it all the time because usually it's not consistent enough to make a difference until the late game, or you only need to see it like mid game or something like that, and it's just that kind of thing. And then there's finally the one-ofs, the spicy cards that usually end up being pieces that either are on the restriction list, or you just only have enough room to add this card just to help either removal or do something along the lines of answering or adding some sort of value to you. So knowing this info gives you a starting point in deck building. But major turning points in card games is that drawing cards is super important and vital to winning the games. So like Magic, anything like that, you're going to be the person who has the most draw value, usually is most likely going to be the one on top, because they're the ones seeing their pieces and combo and going off faster than you are. So you need to keep tempo with them on top of it. But we are not really here to talk about ratios in the game. I just did a quick synopsis of ratio just to give you a good understanding of what that is. But that could be for another video. We kind of go over the math, get the, all the fun mathy things related to that. So get the statistics and everything, why you play X, Y, Z. We could do that for a video if you guys want to. Comment down below if you would like to see that, or if you guys are enjoying this video, let me know. So, but we're talking about searcher cards and draw cards in this video. So in Digimon, either you draw the card you need or you do things that are called top X searchers. So usually this is tied into a Digimon's on play effect or tamer or options kind of on play. You search the X. So Agumon here, this card searches the top 4 for a Greymon or Omnimon and a Tai Kamiya. So this card allows you to grab 2 pieces if revealed. So then it bottom decks the rest. Or there's going to be some that'll say send to the trash. There's all variables that can happen. So, most decks have this kind of searchability, either a Digimon Tamer or even an option that can do this. Similarly in Digimon, there are Digimon Tamers or options that will just draw you a card by doing X. So either by on play, on deletion, anything like that, that will do something. But usually if a deck doesn't normally have a top X searcher, most likely they'll be playing some sort of play draw base to help add the synergy they need. So stuff like that is something you need to look into when you're coming into deck building, and it's really important just to look at and understand at the end of the day. So this is a vital strategy in a lot of card game dynamic, especially in Digimon, where you want to have this draw advantage, and it's really good to have. And I really like that Digimon has this ability. It does, and it adds a layer in complexity in the game. So stuff like this is really important. So, but even further than that, decks, you'll notice these cards called memory boosts, trainings, and once LM03 shuffle. So what do these kind of things do for you? So, well, simply put, have some sort of value to the game, help with consistency of getting your pieces to get to your winning image Vanguard term, but the term vision of winning the game. So basically your end goal, you know, like if you were to play War Greymon, you know, you want to clear out as much security as possible. So you use ties, you use Greymon extra security checks just to clear out as fast as possible, and then Blitz Omni game. So stuff like that is very important to take a look at when we're doing something like this. But how do you get there, especially in Digimon? So without these, most decks would be too slow, clunky, and a major reason we don't see many decks without them topping right now. So most decks right now, you'll see in the top 16s of any major event, there's some sort of training memory boost at the moment. And now sooner, once LMN3 releases, we should start seeing some shuffles if the decks want to be playing that. I don't think shuffle will be as played. Depends on the meta. I think it's a big call on that, but we'll see. So let's start with memory boost. Memory boosts were introduced back in Starter Deck 7 and 8 and was dropped right in between BT5 and BT6 in the English version. They proved much needed strengths in decks. Almost most of the lists played 2 to 4 copies of these cards to help get their combo pieces going. And then seeing as it only costs 3 memory to play, these cards were color restricted, well, color locked, so you could only grab a Digimon of that color when you used it. And it was sometimes difficult if you ran multicolors in your deck. You would whiff, or you had a high tamer count or option count, you could whiff immensely. And seeing as it digs 4, sometimes that dig 4 can help you that hopefully by the next time you draw on the start of your turn, you get the piece you need. But sometimes you can whiff, and that leaves you kind of in the dark when you whiff like that. So, and sometimes there are certain pieces that you need both of them to be. So digging 4 sometimes bottom decked a future piece, and it was going to be a long time before you actually got to it as well. So it caused a lot of issues like that. But it also had a very strong secondary effect that even still is vitally used now. And it's the delay. You pop it later, you gain 2 memory to extend your turn. So sometimes this allows you to Digivolve up further, maybe play something to choke out your opponent back down to 1. Anything like that does help out, is because it's definitely a numbers game with the memory gauge. So you want to have that kind of synergy. So now some lists do play it at 2 to 4 even to this day, but a lot of lists started moving to the training options. Training's options was introduced differently than paired to the memory boost counterpart. These are box toppers for the English side for BT14. Since these tamers are 2 cost options, they are great at choking your opponent's memory and resources effectively. So since you're at 1, you can choke them at 1 if you needed to, or anything like that. Even at 0, giving them 2, most likely they're only going to Digivolve into a champion, play an option, and then it would pass back to you, because they would either give you 3 memory, which would mean you get an excessive amount of resource management that you can just go off with. So being able to choke effectively is a very vital skill in the game, which could be another video in itself if you guys really want to discuss effective choking points in matchups. We could do that. I did that a long time ago with the memory gauge, but it could be a good revamp strategy just so it's a refresher. But now with these cards, it does give you ability to dig 2. So instead of digging 4 like the memory boost, we're digging 2 this time deep. So only 1 card's going to the bottom of your deck. And what's really good about this one, if it's a Digimon, option, or tamer, as long as it meets the color, you can add it to the hand. So now you have points where that, oh, you know, there's a tamer and there's another training. Well, maybe this training will give me more benefit next turn as I draw my next card and then hard play it to hopefully dig even further. So sometimes that comes up in situations as well, giving you a good understanding on how the game metric works. And that's really what you want to do sometimes in card games, is understand what pieces and choking points and everything like that come to vital. So being that So as long as it matches the color, but the delay effect is different. It allows you to reduce the Digivolution cost of the target Digimon by 2. So as long as it matches the colors, you're immediately Digivolving. Just to give a heads up, there is no way of, like, similar to HPD where you can delay the next Digievolution. Whenever you did the next one, it would reduce the cost. This one is immediately, you have to Digivolve afterwards. So the moment you pop it, it goes off. The one downside is that it cannot work with Tamers because they're not Digimon at the time, because the effect on the Digimon converts it into a Digimon. So yeah, that's something you have to keep an eye out on as well, that you can't just Digivolve on top of Tamer. And because of this, most players are playing this at 4 because it's a good consistency. Being able to reduce Digievolution cost is huge because champions are at 0 now, you know, ultimates are at 1, and then megas are at usually 1 to 2s, which is really solid in game design and game metrics. So these two options, training and memory boost, are allowed to be put into the battle area if your opponent hits them in security as their security effect. So these things have a nasty comeback mechanic that if your opponent hits enough of these right off the bat, let's say they hit, you know, they swing in, they take out 2 security. One was a training. You have a rookie and raising. If you already had a training out, now you're promoting up. You now can Digivolve twice and hopefully take out that Digimon in a way that your opponent was not ready for you to just commit to that play. So sometimes these cards come as a great comeback in the security once they're hit. So stuff like that can really throw off. It's another layer of complexity of the game that makes a lot of players have to think outside of the box. So stuff like that can throw your whole strategy out the window, especially if your opponent can now crack back in a way that you weren't ready for. So stuff like that is very important. Now, we do have a new card introduced into the mix once LM03 drops, and this card is called Scramble. Unlike the options before we just talked about, the mem boost and the trainings, this card doesn't do a top deck search. This one sets up and adds consistency in a different way. First off, it's very similar to training with reduced Digivolution cost and a 2 play cost. So this is going to do the choking mechanic that we can do a lot more consistently, but it allows you, instead of Digivolving for a reduced cost of 2, this is a Digievolution cost of 2, because the option costs 2 to play. So it reduces the Digievolution cost by 3, and this leads to being very vital because now this thing can set up and be ready for you when you want to go off again. So what does this really mean at the end of the day? Unlike, you know, the trainings, which was a 2 reduction, it's kind of similar, but, you know, this is only valued for ultimates and or higher. But then the delay is where this thing gets a little nutty. So it's a start a turn effect. So before you even unsuspend and draw, this card checks if your opponent has a Digimon. If they do, boom, you take a card in your trash, put it at the top. So you are going to be drawing that at the start of your turn. So let's say there's a champion in there. You've been bricking on champions this whole time. You only got 1. Well, the Scramble just made it. They just cleared out that stack and now it's in the trash. Well, you have a rookie in raising, you have another ultimate and mega in hand. Now you can put that champion right on top and be ready to throw it at your opponent. So stuff like that is very vital, especially in card games, to comeback strategy. And what's really good is if your board is cleared, this thing, when it goes pop, will now allow you to play a 2000 DP or less Digimon onto the field. This now allows you to get back into the game. It will have summoning sickness, which is okay. You don't have to really need to swing into it because the one coming out of raising should be able to deal with the rest of it. So that's really good in a way because sometimes you just need a comeback strategy. So really good. And if you hit it in security, it plays a 2000 DP or less Digimon. So that won't have summoning sickness because by the time your opponent passes back to you, it's been on your opponent's side for the turn. The summoning sickness is no longer applied. So, but it adds it to your hand, so you can now use it for Digivolving that thing into an ultimate for a 2 cost. These options are extremely great for decks that want to go super tall, going to a level 6 or higher real quickly, or even if you do not plan on going tall, if your color is super focused on this and your synergization is all based on that, you're going to most likely play this, be able to search out your pieces. There are decks that are dual color that plays 2 of the trainings because of how consistently that just helps speed up the deck. You know, stuff like that does add in, and the game is progressing into faster and faster states as the game goes on. But in BT16, there was another card introduced that helps combo decks extremely well, or decks that just don't want to need to go tall, or just decks that just need to find a piece as soon as possible. And this card was introduced to your new best friend, Ukan. So Ukan in BT16, this card does so much for no drawback. The only drawback is the first time you digivolve on an egg, it costs you 1. So this thing is really powerful. The longer it's on the board, the more value you get out of it, because this thing's going to keep constantly hatching every time you promote an egg up, and then it's going to search you more cards. So as long as this keeps happening turn after turn after turn, as long as this thing is on the board, you're gaining so much value out of it, it's not even funny. But again, if you brick and you only had 2 rookies and you don't see one for the rest of it, Ukamon's not doing much. But if it's just constantly snowballing, it gets out of hand pretty quickly. But, you know, this card is really good because the moment it even comes out of raising itself, it goes off. So it hatches you a Digitama, it grabs you a Digimon or Tamer from the top 3 of your check, which can be very important because you need it for synergy, and then which might not look crazy at first on paper, but when applied, this thing goes off crazily. So it single-handedly has made decks competitive again just because of this card. I'm looking at you, Numamon. I'm looking at you, Bond decks that are going to be probably seeing play in BT 17 or, you know, BT 18-ish. So definitely keep that in mind when it comes down to this. I know Bond's decks used to exist been around for a while, but kind of died off after BT6 kind of ended, because every deck was just faster and self-Kazakaziing yourself was not the play. So only time will tell if this card will stay OP or will it just be okay in the format. Depends on what happens and how Bandai wants to handle their card game. But all in all, I think this is a really good introduction to help allow players to get into the game. So what do you guys think? Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you next one. Peace!